Mush!
Mush!
Mush! Oh, he's got the good shorts on, too.
Got the camo
Apropos.
shorts.
I mean, wow.
What's going
All right.
on here? Oh, Chapsy.
All right, so probably the biggest news of the week in the military community is that General Mattis released his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and it's every bit as amazing as you think it would be. He doesn't really go after President Trump, which a lot of people expected him to do. He doesn't even really mention the president too often. He talks about his philosophies of leadership. He talks about his life as a Marine, and it's really a condensed version of the book that's going to be coming out soon that he's releasing. So we wanted to bring in somebody, because it is kind of lengthy, we wanted to bring in somebody who would break up the monotony of our voices. So whenever you think of Barstool personalities and who probably sounds most like legendary Jim Mattis, none other than Marty Mush is
Marty
joining
Mush.
us. Marty, if you'll take it from the top, from General Mattis's words. Here we go.
During the interview, Mr. Trump had asked me if I could do the job. I said I could. I'd never aspired to be Secretary of Defense and took the opportunity to suggest several other candidates I thought highly capable. Still, having been raised by the greatest generation by two parents who have served in World War II, and subsequently shaped by more than 4 decades in the Marine Corps, I considered government service to be both honor and duty. When the president asks you to do something, you don't play Hamlet on the wall, wringing your hands, to quote a great American company slogan. You just do it. So long as you are prepared, you say yes. When it comes, is this still going?
You want him to keep reading?
Yeah, keep going.
All right.
When it comes to the defense of our experiment in democracy and our way of life, ideology
Yeah,
that was
nailed
correct.
it.
Good job.
should have nothing to do with it. Whether asked to serve by a Democratic or Republican you serve, quotations, politics end at the water's edge. That ethos has shaped and defined me, and I wasn't going to betray it. No matter how much I was enjoying my life west of the Rockies, spending time with family I had neglected during my 40-plus years in the Marines.
Marty
Oh, thank you
Mush,
so much.
ladies and
Fantastic.
gentlemen.
Mush.
That was
Appreciate it, Marty.
that was smart.
That was very smart
That
stuff.
was smart.
Yep.
What do you think he was saying there?
Kate, what is wrong with you?
Zero.
I barely could even fucking understand the words. That took me so hard to do.
Well, you did a great job.
You
let me
did
tell
do
you.
a great
Yeah,
job.
I
you
gotta
did
tell you,
excellent, Marty.
I'm
Thank
so
you
excited to
much.
be on this.
Yeah, thank you for joining. He's got the camo shorts on. Ladies and gentlemen, Marty Mush.
Mush.
Marty
Thank you,
Mush.
Marty.
Thank you.
That was unbelievable.
Marty Mattis. Marty Mattis.
Marty Mattis.
There we go.
All right.
Marty brings me back to being
that
in
might
the
have
military,
been a better
though.
idea in my head. I'll take it from there because there is some points that I want to make, and Marty was just about to come on those. So that was a good spot for him to leave. So Mattis picks it up, and he says, "My career in the Marines brought me to the moment and prepared me to say yes to a job of that magnitude. The Marines teach you, above all, how to adapt, improvise, and overcome. But they expect that you have done your homework, to have mastered your profession. Amateur performance is anathema," which is, what does that mean, Cons?
I lost where you
Yeah,
were reading.
zero idea.
I was moving something
So
in
many
the
Setting
studio.
up
words.
stuff in the studio.
Anathema means against the normal thesis.
Right. So that means it's against who we are. So
Yes.
amateur performance is against what Marines are. The Marines are bluntly critical of falling short, satisfied only with 100% effort and commitment. Yet over the course of my career, every time I made a mistake, and I made many, the Marines promoted me. They recognized that these mistakes were part of my tuition and a necessary bridge to learning how to do things right. Year in and year out, the Marines had trained me in skills that they knew I needed while educating me to deal with the unexpected.
I just want to
Beneath
stop
its-
it there for a second, though.
Okay.
All those mistakes, he's like, I made a lot of mistakes, and I kept, they still promoted me. I feel like normally for normies, it doesn't work that way at all. You get, destroyed for any little mistake
Well,
you made.
I'd imagine maybe some of the mistakes he's referring to were not that
Right.
catastrophic.
Yeah.
And they were just maybe leadership miscues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between making a judgment call that probably might have ended up wrong and getting a DUI.
I was thinking how many times he lost his cat card 3 times. and they still
Right.
promoted him. Whew.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's
So
beside the
he
point.
goes on to say, beneath its Prussian exterior of short haircuts, crisp uniforms, and exacting standards, the Marine Corps nurtured some of the strangest mavericks and most original thinkers I encountered in my journey throughout multiple commands and dozen countries. I want to talk about that for a moment because I think that's true. I think that's true of military life in general. Think about some of the problem solvers that you guys met during your terms in serving.
Oh.
Like people who are giving little equipment, a very difficult task, and having to get it done with the shittiest stuff that you could possibly imagine.
Mental MacGyvers all around. And I feel like people are, I'm so sick. They're the crown eaters. Blah, blah. Actually, because I think Marines and all branches, if you're given a task, there's no like, well, we can't do it. It's like, that's not even a thought in your head. It's like, well, we have to do it somehow. That's it. That's the bottom line. So they figure out a way.
Even to your own personal detriment. Because
Right.
after we talked about like the incinerators that are sent instead of the burn pits, some people actually reached out who designed those and who had used some of those in Iraq and Afghanistan. You're only allowed in those to do like 4 or 5 pounds of trash at a time. Is how those incinerators work. So small in order to keep the flames. You just cannot do that.
Right.
So they just said, fuck it, we're going to figure out a way to do it. We're going to do it caveman style, and we're going to blow it up. I think that when you spend 40 years in the Marine Corps like General Mattis did, or in the military in general, you're going to walk away with such a breadth of leadership experience, not just from yourself, but by seeing and experiencing so many different kinds of leaders. We're going to go into another point where he talks about how much time he spent in NATO forces and why that shaped him as well and some of the leadership standards that he did. But I think that he focused on the first part on his op-ed on who he is as a Marine and what the Marine Corps gave him. It gave him ability to solve problems. That's why he could look at a role as large and as grandiose as the Secretary of Defense and walk away and say, yes, this is a job that I can do, not because I'm great, but because of the experiences that I've have been great. So, Con, do you want to read the second portion of the op-ed?
Yes, sure. When I served as Supreme Allied Commander Transformation, a new post created in 2002 to help streamline and reform NATO's command structure, I served with a brilliant admiral from a European nation. He looked and acted every inch the forceful leader. Too forceful. He yelled, dressing officers down in front of others, and publicly mocked reports that he considered shallow instead of clarifying what he wanted. He was harsh and inconsiderate, and his subordinates were fearful. I called in the admiral and carefully explained why I disapproved of his leadership. Quote, your staff resents you, I said. You're disappointed in their input. Okay, but your criticism makes that input worse, not better. You're going the wrong way. You cannot allow your passion for excellence to destroy your compassion for them as human beings.
I want to stop there.
That's a great line.
That's a fucking great line. Like, if you are a young leader listening and I know so many reach out and say, hey, I listen at my desk at work, a lot of my troops, I want to highlight that. You cannot allow your passion for excellence to destroy your compassion for them as human beings. What a great line in leadership.
And I think that's one of the things that made Mattis a cult hero among Marines was that he was this big, tough general, but he also didn't hide these moments where he connected with the lower enlisted and showed his human side too.
Mm-hmm.
This was a point I had always driven home to my subordinates. Change your leadership style, I continued. Coach and encourage, don't berate, least of all in public. But he soon reverted to demeaning his subordinates. I shouldn't have been surprised. When for decades you have been rewarded and promoted, it's difficult to break the habits you've acquired, regardless of how they may have worked in another setting. Finally, I told him to go home. And
this immediately reminds me of the Chief Petty Officer of the Navy who had to be taken down because a young chief, like if you're just an E7 chief, you're berating people and you have like a yelling and more aggressive. People eat that shit up at the battalion and squadron level. Like they love that type of enlisted leader. Once you get to be an E9 with like headquarters level shit, you can't do that anymore. You've got to change and adapt to the situation that you're in. And it sounds like this particular gentleman failed.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for everything and every type of leadership style, and that's just certainly not the way to do it. The loudest and jerkiest leader is usually not the best.
Also, I wish I had been, because I'm sure he didn't politely say, please go home. I would like to be a fly on the wall for what.
Well,
I'm sure he was cool about it.
I bet he did.
Yeah.
Because I think that was
thinking.
one of the things that marked me about Chesty Puller's style of leadership, too. He wasn't a yeller, because once he got to lieutenant general anyway, he wasn't a yeller. Because you don't need to be. Whenever you're sitting there with 3 stars and you're in charge, you don't have to. And I think that that's what his point is. Like, to be an effectual leader, you don't have to do that.
I still like to think he said, "You little bitch," like under his breath a little bit as the guy was walking away.
You can, what is it? Kristen Wiig, you can
Get out.
Yeah, I think it was
You
like that.
just Get
out.
Yeah.
I
You
just
take your Russian ass and you get out.
Oh yeah, that's how
I just want to go back to the line about, you can't allow your passion for excellence to destroy your compassion for them as human beings. I think especially, once you get to become an NCO or as an officer and you want to progress in your career, if you know the military is for you and you want to make it a 20-plus year career, if you have that compassion for others, a byproduct of that is that you are going to be excellent because your soldiers, your Marines, your airmen, your sailors, they're going to want to work for you and they're going to give you their best.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that excellence because it's just going to come as a product of being a good leader. And you be a good leader by showing that human compassion.
You're absolutely right. Mattis does not reach cult status like he is in the Marine Corps and really across the DOD if there's stories that leak out about him being a dickhead to a young E5.
Boy, I
It
love
just
that
doesn't
guy.
happen.
He was just
People would
such a
see
dick, I just loved the way he
Right.
treated everybody like shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Big
Nobody
respect.
would like that. So he finally gets to the point of what he's saying. Not finally gets to the point, but lastly, he makes some remarks about what all these lessons sum up and where he thinks that we should be going as a country. Kate, you want to walk us down that path?
Sure, he said, unlike in the past where we were unified and drew in allies, currently our own commons seem to be breaking apart. What concerns me most as a military man is not our external adversaries, it is our internal divisiveness. We are dividing into hostile tribes, cheering against each other, fueled by emotion and a mutual disdain that jeopardizes our future instead of rediscovering our common ground and finding solutions. All Americans need to recognize that our democracy is an experiment and one that can be reversed. We all know that we're better than our current politics. Tribalism must not be allowed to destroy our experiment.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Wisdom.
Yes. And it's
And-
so true. I mean, all you need to do is turn on the television or go on Twitter, and it's all about the dunking on you culture. As opposed to coming together, having a discussion, coming to solutions, it's let me tell you why you're wrong. And that's obviously not working because I think more so than any other time in my 34 years, we are more divided as a country than we've ever been.
Yeah.
Whether you're right or left, and it really is upsetting.
Indeed it is. But I think, and people too, they took these 2 paragraphs here and they're like, oh, and they even did it here when he's saying like, we need to, and they're like, Mattis slam dunks on Trump, blah, blah, blah. And like, you're doing exactly what he's
Right.
saying not to do, you
Right.
stupid But then again,
Well,
as
I
a
think-
lady who writes my
And
own
I
clickbait.
think I made a point in the group chat where we talked about this a little bit, where you had these people who have, for their entire careers, their long distinguished careers, have been very prudent in the way that they speak, and they have been very precise in the way that they speak. And they expected them to get to this global stage, this stage in front of the country, and whether it be Mueller from the investigation or whether it was Mattis from his op-ed in his book, where they expected almost like them to be like, okay, well, I'm going to throw out everything that I've ever done in my career, and now is the kind of time I'm going to come and dunk on Trump. They didn't do that. They spoke what they said. If you can't read between the lines,
right.
get better
Then
glasses,
you
I
can't-
guess.
I think he's saying some things pretty explicitly, although he's
Yeah.
using a lot of big words that probably are going over a lot of people's heads, sorry to say.
Marty Mush, what up?
He's definitely saying things pretty straightforward. He's like, we're divided, and that's not going to get us anywhere. And I love the line that he says, our democracy is an experiment and that one can be reversed. I think that meaning has twofold. Just because we have a democracy doesn't mean it can't crumble, but also because it's an experiment, you can continue to change and to adapt. And just because politics have been one way for so long and everyone digs their heels in and supports one side or the other, it doesn't have to be like that forever. You can continue to evolve and continue to change with the times, and I think that's what I read in that statement.
Yeah.
Change your scientific method to make everything come out in the outcome that you want and make it better.
One more thing. This was like a little teaser for his book that's coming out. So it was a little bit motivated by that too. But he talks a little bit about, in the one paragraph, he says how, I'm enjoying my life now after 40 years of service. I'm back home with family that I've neglected out west. And I think it's Oregon or Washington State. I forget which one. But there's a river there that I heard he is always out fly fishing and stuff. And when I went out there last summer and I was driving around, I looked at every river. I was like, please let me see Mattis fishing. Please let me see Mattis fishing.
What would you do if you saw him? What would you do?
It's Kate, General Mattis, and then the Norwal from Buddy the Elf, where he comes up and he's like, "Hi, Mattis. Hope you find your dad."
Yeah, like I could not stop looking around and just hoping, because I heard he just like will pop into a pub or like he's in the river fishing. And so I like.
Is he much of a drinker?
I don't think so. I don't think you make it that far that successfully.
I think that whenever they did a profile of his home, the only thing that he had like on one of the tables was a bottle of whiskey in a single glass.
Yeah, so
right
maybe
below,
just sips of.
I mean, I'm sure he's
glass
not a
wine.
heavy drinker. I'm
Right.
sure he's like, I drink like 2 or 3 fingers of bourbon while reading some book about war from 1645.
He
that nobody else has ever
absolutely,
even heard of.
he absolutely wears cardigans with leather elbow patches now.
Oh,
For
yeah.
sure he does.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do that
Last
too,
note
if
about
only
it,
to
I think
appear
it's,
smart.
I think it's interesting that the people who have previewed his book, which I wish I was one of them, people who have previewed his book said that he doesn't even mention his time as Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Goes about his military career, doesn't even address it really. So
There you
that's we're trying to get him on the show because he's going to be doing book rounds. That is like a golden goose.
Oh, yeah.
Big time. All right, good round. Let's move on to round 3.